I always say when you talk about anything, especially to do with politics or sort of the real world, sometimes you have to look at things and go, what actually are these actions going to achieve? What are the outcomes? And that, to be honest, is something that a lot of people, both politically on the left and the right, completely forget to acknowledge a reality of what could happen. And the big thing, of course, we're talking about really at the moment, which I am really glad there is a massive bit of attention to this. And this may be the moment where we can finally deal with this. But let's not forget this Russian money, this Russian oligarch money that has been welcomed very much into the city of London for the past 20 years is not going to be easy to get rid of. We have to, as Boris Johnson has said, strip away the layers of the onion to find out who the true owner of these assets and this stuff is, which I'm really glad about. But of course, again, something that if you were the Tories and you were really concerned about this, then maybe you would have been helping to fund these white collar crime units that the Met has, but they haven't. Under the cuts, that was one of the first things to go. Even at the time, you can go back right to the start of these cuts to like the head of one of the police units saying there is going to be a massive increase in white collar crime in this country, and there has been, because there is little next to no one to be able to deal with it. So while I am glad that this is good and going ahead and this talk has started, and there does seem to be at least some serious action, even if it is somewhat, as slow as a tortoise, I'm glad that it's going forward. But let us also talk about the reality of this. While this is going to hurt Putin in some ways, this isn't going to be the thing that topples him. So, as always, before we do go jumping into the article, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a motivation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do support the channel that way. So, on with this. This comes from The Guardian with the title of "Clearing London of Dirty Russian Money Would Be Great, but It Won't Topple Putin." We yearn to help. Wrong must be put to right. Something must be done. The agony was plain on Boris Johnson's face as a Ukrainian berated him for refusing to impose a no-fly zone on Russia. When an outrage is being perpetrated and untold numbers of people are dying on our very own screens, the impotence is misery. So we loudly voice our support for Ukraine. We hate Vladimir Putin. We hate the oligarchs, hate Russians. It eases our pain. The early stages of the war are always moments when reason is told to leave. As the drums of battle roll, the courage demands emotion, and unity is all. The only resolution is glory or death. Talk of compromise is treason, and this especially is true in Europe, with its long history of bilateral conflicts that demand to be seen as world wars. There are also specific actions that Britain could take to ease Ukraine's suffering, and Britain has been clearly reluctant to take them. The most immediate is to throw open Britain's borders to Ukrainian refugees, as EU countries have done with their plans to allow Ukrainians to live and work in the EU for up to 3 years. London's Home Office, clearly under orders, turned back desperate refugees in Paris, demanding work-related visas and scrutiny clearance. There are also reports of the border bureaucracy at the Channel stalling humanitarian supplies from local aid centres. This sacred rituals of Johnson Brexits must overrank even Putin's war. Beyond that, the horror as what Putin must be expressed through the instrument of economic sanctions, the hope that he will see the error of his ways or be toppled in a coup, is very difficult for that fact of war as the ultimate expression of a nation's will to reduce all aspects of statehood to irrelevance under arms. A ruler such as Putin, who has been the target of severe sanctions for 8 years, is plainly deaf to their impact. Democracies allow dissent, and although Britain seems to be unable to tolerate RT's pro-Russian propaganda, but dictatorships do tend to be strengthened, not undermined by economic siege. Coups are always unpredictable, and we can only pray that Moscow in 2020 will be that exception that disproves the rule. And it is puzzling, therefore, that the West is even weakening its case by continuing to buy Russian oil and gas. The most bizarre fate of this entire erratic bystanders of this drama is the so-called oligarchs. This Freemasonry of the most expatriate Russia has of 20 years have been fettered with the very open arms in London, with gilded retainers of lawyers, accountants, and lifestyle consultants. Their golden visas and party donations enable them to come and go as they please. They are permitted to hide from taxation, regulation, and scrutiny behind the shuttered Georgian windows, the empty tower blocks, and the secretive British overseas territories. While in times past Putin is known to have links with such people, I have seen no report out of Moscow that indicates they nowadays enjoy any access to influence over him, let alone the power to reverse a war or even depose him. Recently, books by Catherine Belton and Ollie Bullington, often others, depict him as a rather mafia-like boss, terrorizing the oligarchs with a mix of extortions, bribes, imprisonments, and even attempted murder. But also to a desperate British government, they are also the only manifestations of Russian power to hand and must be hurled symbolically onto Putin's pyre. This is not an attack on Russia so much as a massive course correction in Britain's attitude to foreign money. It would be truly ironic if it took the invasion of Ukraine to cure London of its favoritism towards money launderers, many of whom are Ukrainian. No one can even calculate the sums of appropriation to Britain from Russian sovereign assets since 1989. And as far from other sources of dodgy cash from Africa, the Gulf, the Far East, the British Treasury has long been a co-conspirator of depriving countries around the world of their rightful revenues. The manifestation of this in London is the conversation is about more salacious districts into storehouses of vagrant money. It remains the outrageous that individuals can buy and leave vacant whole streets or even tower blocks in the middle of the capital city, and then they are charged less than £3,000 in annual council tax for multi-million pound properties that in New York would be taxed at 50 times that. And of course, with the local and national income tax on top of that, the latest research from the Transparency International estimates that at least 40% of luxury properties on the London market now go to, quote, suspect buy-to-leave investors. Johnson has been wildly in favour of this racket. As Mayor of London, he called these luxury properties the thrilling inward investment. He toured Malaysia to help sell empty properties to at the Battersea power station, and even dismissed any critics as Gloomageddon poppers. As many have found, nothing is more dangerous than to have Johnson as a fan. If he can topple Putin, he is determined at the least to humble some of his former associates. But will he really do it? Confiscate private homes, fine their owners for being Russian, expel them from the country, unless they are criminals. We surely do not punish people for their nationality. I enjoy the company of many Russians, and unlike the government, I do not hold them responsible for their monstrous ruler. News that Roman Abramovich feels that he must sell his London property, sell his London palace, and of course the football team will not lift the spirits in the Kiev bunker or lose Putin much sleep. If this really signals the end of the long-running London scandal, then good. But what is needed is action, not words. And the current economic assault on Russia and the Russians is unprecedented, and its outcome will therefore be impossible to predict. The feel-good sanctions in the past have inflicted poverty and injustice on peoples around the world, and to no political or other benefit. We can only wait and see if Russia does capitulate to them. For the time being, I'm left feeling hopeful that only a few oligarch mansions in Kensington do find their way into the hands of Ukrainian refugees. And I do sort of feel that similar way as well. Like, while these sanctions will ultimately definitely bite into Russia and certainly, I think, change the Russian people's mood on Putin, almost certainly. Ultimately, what are the effects of these sanctions are going to do? Ultimately, we will not know until, a couple of months down the line. But like I say, at the moment, with the way that the Russian ruble is tanking, it's difficult to see how Russia survives even these very incredibly strict sanctions. It's very difficult to see, especially when you look up how much money this invasion is costing them per day. It's impossible to see how they keep that going. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button on your way out. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.